So someone asked a question earlier about how much is the process related to the overall paintings, right? Is this correct?
Yeah, that's correct. And maybe how much time to focus just on the thumbnailing process versus other stuff.
What do you mean by that?
I don't know, maybe whether it be, like value studies, maybe if you're doing still lifes or color theory or, like what is like, how much would you just focus on the thumbnailing process?
Like overall? Is that what you're trying to say?
Yeah. Yeah.
Wait, hold on just 1 second. Someone on my Slack is pinging me a lot. Um, so, uh, see, the problem with that question is that no matter what the answer I give you, it won't make any difference. And the reason why is because it's misleading. Everyone is at different levels of skill. So for instance, if I were to just tell you, focus on your shapes and your design elements, but you still have a hard time with Photoshop and managing just like the painting in Photoshop, then
Mhm.
it's a distraction. Do you see the problem? Like it's true, you should be focusing on these things, but if this is a problem that you're dealing with that's like a different problem, then you need to address that problem first. And then let's say you start to get better at Photoshop, you go to shapes and design, you start getting that, and then when you try to render something, then you're like, man, my renderings are not very good. And then it could be a multitude of things. It could be because you have a lack of an understanding of form, anatomy, perspective, lighting, right? Colors.
Yeah.
And so
So
it's,
you kind of do like a personal inventory of
yeah,
what you need.
yeah. And so I think you're right to suspect that the questions were probably too general. Okay.
Yeah.
And so the way that you do this is just do the assignments as I ask, right? And then once you fail, then we'll be a lot more objective. Do you understand?
Yeah.
So for instance, with Jason's a great example. Like Jason did something and I was able to see that he didn't use any reference at all. So his first hurdle is just to use reference more often. Okay. And as he does it, he'll stumble upon some other issues and we'll talk about it then, just like many of you guys have already done. Right? Some people in this class don't really have painting problems, but they have design problems. So we focus on that. Some people don't have design problems, they have painting problems. So we focus in on that. For instance, Rachel, she's struggling with focusing. She always wants to change her damn mind every 5 seconds. So instead of giving her the 5 iterations or 5 characters with 3 iterations, I gave her 3 characters with 6 iterations with the goal
Mhm.
of making her focus. Does it make sense?
Yeah.
So like it would make no sense to me to give her an assignment that's similar to most of you guys if she has a very clear problem that we need to
Mhm.
address and fix. Make sense?
Yeah.
So the question you asked is how does all this stuff relate to kind of the overall, like what does this painting with shapes and forms contributes to the overall, um, like the overall thing called constant art? And everything relates. That's the problem with that kind of
Mhm.
the question is that all things relate. The more you understand your anatomy, perspective, forms, design, contrast, proportions, aesthetics, uh, all the laundry list of colors, values, so many things. All of these things add
Mhm.
up to what you will be in the future version of yourself. The problem is this. It's not so much the what or how, it's the perception. So here's you. Here's little Matthew. And you're like, what in the fuck? All those things I need to learn.
Mm-hmm.
And you ask yourself, which do I learn first? That's kind of where you're coming from.
Yeah.
And I'm saying, whatever you decide to, just pick one stone up,
Mm-hmm.
you know, get one stone and then put it over here. Okay? Learn one thing. And once you put
Yeah.
that there and you're like, well, I need another stone. So you go like over here and grab another one, right?
Yeah.
And then you stack it over here, right?
Mm-hmm.
And then one day, this will happen. Do you see what I've done there? There's less
Mm-hmm.
stones to pick up, and then you put over here your actual knowledge that you know.
Mm-hmm.
You would have acquired quite a bit of an information now, right?
Yeah.
And then you're like, all right, well, what's next? And then you'll find maybe a whole different mound somewhere else. You know, there's a whole multitude of mounds of information in the off in the distance that you could collect and add to your personal collection of information. You get it?
Yeah.
So the problem isn't so much what do you do to get started to improve yourself. The question is just what are you not doing? Okay?
Mm.
Because
Okay.
even if you're doing something wrong, you're learning. You're learning what
Okay.
not to do. Make sense?
Mm-hmm. I
And
mean,
so,
I came into this class with just how deceptively hard this is. Like I didn't realize because I've never done this before. I didn't
uh-huh.
realize that the process was just this difficult, and it just surprises me. So,
Oh, really? Okay. Well, it is.
yeah, I don't know. It's
Yeah,
just
it is
it's just
difficult. Let me tell you some stories, okay? Um,
yeah,
because I never had that delusion, or I was never that naive. Um, I actually embrace your honesty of how naive you were. That's good. It's like I said earlier. It's good to admit what you do not know than it is to admit what you think you know. Like there's a great Mark Twain quote about this where he says, you know, it is better to be to not know, right? It's better to not know than it is to know but be wrong, right?
mm-hmm.
Meaning that like you think you know what's right, and every time someone argues against you, you're like, no, that's not the case. It's actually worse to be that because you will be blinding yourself from the reality of the things around you. You get what I'm trying to get at?
Yeah,
Versus just saying, you know, I just probably don't know. I don't know enough about this thing. And
mm-hmm.
it's better to admit because then from there you can add knowledge. There's an ability to add more information. There's a lot of scientific research that demonstrates that the human mind doesn't necessarily lose learning power as you get older. There's this kind of conception or this idea that people generally lose their brain power, I guess, when they get older and older. When you're young, that's when you're the most lively when it comes to gathering information. And the reality is actually a little bit different. Yes, as you get older, it becomes a little bit more difficult for your brain to make relatively new connections, but not significantly different. Okay,
Mm-hmm.
it's still pretty close to what it was when you were an infant. Okay, uh,
Yeah,
if you didn't do anything to harm it, your brain that is, right? Like drink
mm-hmm.
tons and tons and tons of alcohol every day of your life, like things that actually destroy your brain. Okay.
Yeah,
Um, and so then why is it so hard for people to learn new ideas? It actually has a lot more to do with the fact that people have these already preconceived ideas that are hard to divorce. You get what I'm saying?
mm-hmm.
That's what makes it hard for people to learn new things. It's not so much that they can't, it's because their brain is full of a bunch of bad ideas that they just don't want to get rid of.
Yeah,
It's called cognitive dissonance. There's an actual term for this. Okay.
mm-hmm.
And so getting to the story I was going to tell you though. So when I was in school, you know, I wanted to be a character concept artist. And, you know, every time I told this to my teachers or to my counselors, not all of them, but definitely the ones that didn't know what the hell they're doing, Most of them were just like, but it's a very difficult, dude. That's a very difficult industry to get into, concept art. So you should learn modeling. And I said, but I don't want to do modeling. I want to be a concept artist. And they're like,
Mm,
yeah, we hear you, but that's like really difficult, though. You know that, right? And I said, I
mm,
know. I know it's hard, but what are the steps that I can take to achieve that? And every time they were just like, well, it's very difficult though. You should reconsider modeling. So they basically never gave me advice on how to achieve these things. They just kept on saying to me, um, they just kept on saying to me, uh, it's hard, right?
yeah,
And you know, you should have understood that this is true because I mean, nothing really worth having is extremely difficult.
yeah.
You know,
Well,
I'm sorry, everything worth having is extremely difficult. Not nothing, like nothing is
like,
truly easy, right?
yeah. I mean, I know concept art in general is hard, but
Hmm.
specifically the thumbnailing process, at first it didn't look. I didn't think it was going to be as difficult as it is.
Yeah.
I
So
guess. So
so
I
that's
was naive.
yeah, totally. And so here's some advice. Well, let me finish kind of the story. So yeah, I was just constantly told that it was difficult. You know, that's
Yeah.
not that is not necessarily good advice because it's just saying, oh, I want to be an astronaut. Oh, but you have to learn a lot of math and you have to learn a lot of science and aerospace knowledge and engineering. Yeah, I get that. You know,
Yeah. Mhm.
and then to your point, to think that any little aspect of it would be simpler than others. Yeah, that might be true for certain things, right? Like it's simple to understand that if you just draw straight lines all the time, that you'll get better at drawing straight lines. That's not a very difficult concept to wrap your mind around, nor is it too difficult to improve upon, right?
Yeah.
But I like to tell my students that you should consider everything, all things, if not everything, um, or most things, if not everything, are extremely difficult
Mhm.
or have some challenge to it, including something that may appear more simpler, like thumbnails, um, or like stylized artwork. That's another good like thing that people might think, oh, it's a little bit easier because it's all cartoony. No, that's also very difficult. Treat everything that has some difficulty to it. Remember, like that Mark Twain quote I just said, just assume that you don't know anything, okay, versus then you think you know what you're going to be able to do, right?
Yeah.
Because as soon as you do that, you put yourself in a place of humility, and humility will let you um, grow.
Yeah.
Do you understand?
I understand.
So as soon as you admit, like, you know what, thumbnails are just difficult, I should take this a lot more seriously. And the reason why I'm struggling with thumbnails might be revealing how little I actually know about drawing. You know,
Yeah.
and that's
Yeah.
very revealing, but it's great because then you know where to start. So
Oh
let me.
yeah. I mean, it's been really great. I've been really exposed to this, and
Oh, great,
where I need to work on. So it's
perfect.
been a really positive process.
Yeah, so let me give you a few anecdotal evidence from like previous students I've had who had suffered from this conundrum. So I had one student who would just constantly kind of like debate me about how much they actually knew. I would always tell them to work on their anatomy and their forms. You know, I was like, you got to work on this stuff, bro. And they're just like, I don't need to because I'm already really good. And they didn't say it like that. They said it more on the lines of like, I do study my anatomy. I already know my anatomy. It's not that. It's something else. Like you have to help me figure it out. Like, my work's just not that great. And I was like, I know, but like it's because of your anatomy. Like it's your forms and it's your values. They're just not very consistent and not very accurate. And he's like, yeah, I hear you, but like, dude, trust me. I went to school. I did lots of anatomy stuff. Like I did it, man. So I don't think
Hmm.
it's that. I think it's something else. And I'll just like sit there and argue with this guy every class about this. He'll listen to me eventually. He'll be like, all right, I'll try, but he wouldn't try it. And then he'll come in and see, like I'm telling you something. And I was like, no, man, it's like you're not really practicing your forms. And I just demonstrated and demonstrated time and time again.
Hmm.
And then one day I had a solution to this problem. And I said, let's do something. I was like, find one of your favorite artists that you admire Okay, and he did. He found like he's like this artist. I was like, do you like this painting? I picked one painting from one of his favorite artists, right? And he was like, yeah, this painting's epic. And I was like, okay, great. And I was all, so tell me this. What is it about this painting, or not before I did that, I was like, do you agree that this painting is better than your painting? Like anything that you've ever painted? And he's like, of course, right? And I was like, okay, great. So we're on the same page. And I said, all right, now answer the simple question. Why do you think their paintings are better than your paintings? Like, what is it about their paintings that are really amazing and about yours that you feel like you're missing? And that
Mm-hmm.
was the first time he was just like, oh man, like his forms are really good and his anatomy is like on mark, you know? Like
Yeah.
it is, and I could see in his response that he finally understood what I was trying to get at, right?
Okay. Yeah.
And I explained to him, and then we talked about it afterwards. He's like, "Oh my gosh, I can't believe I didn't notice that before." Right? He's like, "I'm sorry." He started kind of being a little more apologetic about his um, mutiny, and I was like, "Listen," I was like, "It's because you're a big fish in a small pond, right?" Like when he was in high school, he was always told that he was an amazing artist, so he always believed that he was an amazing artist. And there's some truth to that. He was really good, but
Yeah.
not as good as he wanted to be and not as good as the people that he was inspired by. And I was trying to help him get there, and he just was being resilient because he's been consistently conditioned to know that he is better than that. But the reality is, I told him, like, you're not, though, and you need to improve that. And once he started to recognize that, he dramatically improved his work
Mm-hmm.
overnight. And it had a lot to do with what you just experienced, which is like admitting that there is a lot of room to improve. And I told him, like, for me, it was easier to be more specific with him because I was working with him already for quite a while, you know,
Mm-hmm.
and I can see the results coming in on a daily basis. And and so, uh, that's what I'm trying to get with you to understand as well. And one other point that I want to make is that whenever I was critiquing students' work at like workshops or portfolio reviews, there would be a consistent theme that I would see. I would see people submit to me their portfolios, and their portfolios would have like life drawing or still life or some sort of portrait painting, something that's super nice, you know.
Yeah. That's kind of what I've been focusing on, and
Yeah, so check
as
it out. Yeah, so check it
yeah.
out. I'm gonna make a point about this, and so then when I would see that, and then I would see their actual concept art, right?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
It would be very clear to me the problem. And I will say, look, let's do this together. Very similar to what I did my original student that I just told the story about. I was like, let's look at your work, like your concept artwork, the work that you consider concept art. And
Mm-hmm.
let's talk about why your concept art, right? Let's talk about why your concept art looks like trash, but then your life drawing stuff and your figure drawing and your still life stuff looks great.
Yeah.
I was like, how come when you're painting metal for like a still life painting, it looks like metal, looks like chrome. But then when you're painting metal for a character, it looks like plastic. Where's the disconnect there? Why is that happening?
Mm-hmm.
And it's great because when I do that, the students almost immediately are like, yeah, wait a minute, you know? And
Mm-hmm.
I explain to them it's because you actually don't know how to paint metal without it being right in front of you. That is the
Yeah.
problem. It's like you need reference because you're a really great observer. You're a really good copycat. If the
Mm-hmm.
reference is right in front of you, you can emulate it. But if it's
Mm-hmm.
not, there's no subconscious tools or memory for you to be able to convey what you want to convey in your actual concept art. And I believe that's true for you probably,
Mm-hmm.
right? And
Yeah.
once you reveal this yourself, like reveal this about yourself, then the true learning begins or can begin. You get it?
Yeah. Hmm.
Because then you start focusing your strategies on how to improve your work in a more practical way versus a more uh, artsy fartsy way. Because the problem with the other method is that you create this illusion of of you create this illusion of expertise, but you're not really an expert. You just can just paint what you see. And let me be very, very clear. That's not easy to do either. Okay?
Hmm.
That's also challenging and it has some challenging aspects to it, okay? So not everybody can just pick up a paintbrush and just start painting what they see. It takes some effort. But what you're
Yeah.
truly improving is just your observational skills, to be able to see the differences between certain shapes and patterns and being able to recognize it. But you're basically a puzzle creator. You're putting together a really complicated puzzle. All right?
Hmm. Yeah.
But if you want to be a concept artist who can just paint from your imagination, then you have to fuel your imagination with information that is actually practical.
Hmm.
And that means requiring to learn your anatomy, your forms, perspective, lighting, design. You see how it all comes back? But no one thing is like the thing that's going to get you there faster. All of it is important. Make sense?
Yeah.
And you just got to start with wherever you're at. Maybe you have a really good sense of anatomy or figure, but not as best, like not as good as you it could be. But just that's a good place to start. And then you can just say, okay, well, what are the nuances that are holding me back? Like the subtleties between muscle transitions, like this types of things, you know?
Hmm.
And just start getting
Yeah.
better at that. And then say, oh, now my designs are kind of falling on the wayside. So how do I improve my designs? All right, so then you do some design practice by looking at reference that you feel like has a really good sense of design, both on a visual level, but also on maybe on a personal level. Like you start to see, well, why does this artwork make me feel different than this artwork? These types of things, right?
Hmm.
And then you just start practicing and understanding that and putting it into your subconscious. Um, See, the way that your brain works is the more you do something, the better you get at it. Like I mentioned that earlier to Jessica, right? And she agrees
Yeah.
1000%. And I think everybody in here agrees. And what's great about this is that even if you disagreed, you're wrong because it's a fact. And
Hmm.
you know what's beautiful about facts? Regardless if you believe in them or not, they're always going to stay true. You know, facts are stubborn things. You know,
Yeah.
and so you have to rely on that to get you through the grudge, the not the grudge, but the dirt and mud, which is called excellence and mastery, right? It just takes time. And you can
Hmm.
do it. There's no doubt in my mind that you'll be able to get there. And so now let me give you some more practical advice. Okay, so this is a little bit more philosophical, what I was trying to get at, more anecdotal evidence, and also just like some insight to kind of get your mind space in the right area so you understand kind of where you're sitting at. Okay, so now
Yeah.
how do you improve on these things? Well, you have to create a quantifiable way of to learning how to improve this stuff. And there's a really easy way to do that, to quantify. And I usually consider this being the real way to improve your studying habits, which is tests. Okay? So
Hmm.
basically create a situation where you can test your results. Understand?
Yeah.
How does this work? Well, do a painting in an hour with no
Okay.
reference, with no notes, no video in the background, just you and your painting and just go for 1 hour. And
Okay.
then at the end, write down all the things that you were struggling with. Like write down like, okay, this was sucky. Like when I was trying to do this, I didn't know how to do it. I kept on guessing or I kept on reworking. Self-reflection. Write down
Hmm.
all the problems that you faced. Then pick like the top two maybe to study.
Okay.
And then, a week or 2 weeks later, do that test again. 1 hour later. And then compare your results. Compare from the week before and then the week now, right?
Hmm.
And then and again, keep doing that. Self-reflection. Say, oh, I kind of improved on this, but I think I need to work on this now. You know? And
Yeah.
so then this way it's not like, well, AJ said I had to spend 2 hours on forms, 3 hours on perspective. You know, it's nothing like that. It's more organic and true to what your true weaknesses are at that moment in your life. And if you
Okay.
just if you continue doing this throughout the next 4 or 5 years, you'll become excellent, no doubt in my mind. Okay,
Uh-huh.
because it takes
Okay.
time too. It's not going to happen overnight,
Yeah.
but it will absolutely happen if you stay consistent with it. There is absolutely nothing in your way to becoming an excellent concept artist or badass painter if you just continuously criticize your skill set.
Yeah.
Let me give you a demo on how why tests work and how you should think about it and what you were doing wrong before, and then we'll take another question. All right. So I'm going to teach you how to solve an equation. Okay. You probably already know, but this is just a demo about how to test yourself. So what you got to do is you got to get the x by itself. This is going to be a paraphrase version, so I can just move on real quickly. I'm not going to get too deep. You got to get the x by itself. And the best way to do that is you can apply, multiplications or adding, subtracting to both sides to get rid of the numbers on that side. So for instance, we have -4. We can do add 4, but like I said, you have to do it to both sides, so you have to add 4 to this side as well. All right? And then you bring it all down, so you end up with 2x equals 8. Well, this is multiplication, so we got to divide. So x equals 4. That's how you solve for 4. And you can test your answer by plugging in and back in. You know,
Mm-hmm.
2 times 4 is 8. 8 minus 4 is 4.
Mm-hmm.
There it is. We got it. Now, here's what the test is. 3x minus 12 equals 7. Okay? And this is what you were trying to do before. X equals 4. That's wrong.
Mm-hmm.
And you're like, why am I wrong? Like I got the answer here before. Why isn't it working here? It's because the answer is not what you should have been learning. It's how to get the answer is what you should have been learning.
Okay.
Does this make sense?
Mm-hmm.
So the parallel to this to art is that this is like learning your perspective and foundational stuff. You get what I'm saying? Like all that is how to solve for X, which is X in this case is making badass art. Okay? Yeah, because if you just look and copy paste what you see, then you're not going to create your own original artwork, and you're going to always be in a position of weakness because you will never really know how to paint anything on your own.
Yeah.
Okay?
Uh-huh.
Does this make
Okay.
sense to you?
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, let me give you a last final example that actually was true to me. When I was first starting out, I would always look at Ryan Meinerding and Charlie Wen's paintings as a guide to what I wanted to get out of my painting. I went to a workshop once. I saw Charlie Wen do a demo, and it was freaking amazing. And I was like, I want to paint like that. And so I found all his artwork online, and I just like worshipped it for like my early stages of my career. And I realized something. Whenever I needed to paint something that he didn't paint, like let's say he never painted chrome, right?
Mm-hmm.
Then I can't paint chrome. You see the problem?
Yeah.
He or like him and Ryan both needed to have an example for me to live up to. And if they didn't do it, then I couldn't do it. And I realized that's a problem because I don't think that they couldn't paint chrome. I'm sure they could, right?
Yeah.
But they didn't have anything in their portfolio or on their blogs that I could use as a reference. Do you see? So
Mm-hmm.
then I had to learn how to paint chrome. But then I realized this is what I need to learn. I need to learn not just like painting techniques, but I need to learn like how things work. Okay. And then that's when I started doing that. Then it became clear that I can paint like Charlie and Ryan, but paint things without them needing to demonstrate it to me.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Okay.
And that's kind of, again, a larger scope answer to that first question you were having. Okay. And hopefully this gives you some really good insight as you move forward through the class.
All right, sounds good. I think Nicholas has a question, so
Yeah,
I'll mute. Him.
yeah. You get out of here. All right, Nicholas, go ahead and voice your question.
Yeah, just two questions. For the level of design, I just have to create two evolution of the same character to the simple character, to the badass character, to the boss. And in the iteration, can I do some change of the design, or just a big change, or just little changes?
It's secondary changes, so they're not too tiny, but they're not too big. Like, don't just all
Okay,
of a sudden add like a tentacle coming out of the face. But if you wanted to make like a cloth a little bit longer or shorter or a different color, these types of things. So like the essence or the spirit of the original design is there.
okay,
You understand?
yeah, spirit and
Yeah.
is the original design, yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah,
so it's not like completely changed. So like if you've played like a game like League of Legends or Overwatch, like there's an example of that with the idea that like you know they're not necessarily when they do new skins for their characters, they're not necessarily changing the silhouette so much that's completely a different character
okay,
all of a sudden. That's what you should do too.
okay. And the second question, um, uh, can I start trying to use color on the iteration
Yeah,
cycle?
if you feel comfortable doing that, go for it.
I don't feel comfortable with colors, but I
Oh,
don't watch for the moment the video tutorial of colors, so I'm going to watch it and maybe, you know,
yeah, I usually try to have people just take their take one step at a time.
yeah,
But
yeah,
but if you feel you want to do it, I can't stop you. But if it ends up
yeah,
not too great, then we can talk about it why.
yeah, yeah, and no, and just say that I'm I'm very happy because I just feel for the last half and a day,
Uh-huh.
do, doing this level of design. Before I was just I feel fear, and I feel all the time, oh, I will not have enough time, and I was just in a kind of fear way. And
Hmm.
now I don't feel fear. I feel better confident. In fact, I know, okay, I'm going
Oh,
to do this.
perfect.
I'm going to try this. So yeah, it's so that I just want to say that because it's really important for me. The fear is just all the time. The fear just give me confusion, or wasting time, or just you know complicate compli the fear all the time is just making complication in very normal
Yes,
things. You know what I mean?
I do know what you mean. That fear is real. It's just because your brain doesn't want you to be uncomfortable.
Yeah,
And it makes sense, and I think I mentioned this before, it makes sense more on like an animalistic sense of like where we used to live in the wild to kind of be a little bit more insecure and fearful for certain things that come to you, because it could be useful to your survival. But in concept art, trying to get better at concept art, it's there's nothing to be afraid of. There's nothing to lose. In fact, the
yeah,
more you allow your brain to experience these failures, the sooner you'll start to improve upon
yeah,
them. Okay, so yeah, that's great. I'm glad to hear that. It's very
yeah.
inspiring.
Yeah. I need a rest, but it's great. It's like good effort. It's poof.
Yeah, that's great.
But yeah, it's okay. Yeah, it's okay. With the kids manage, that you get to so yeah, but it's cool. I feel great, and I was a little bit, I was um, how do you say that? I'm looking for my English word. Sorry, for my vocabulary.
No, don't worry.
Uh,
I barely
um,
speak English too, so it's not a big deal. Like you
uh,
speak two languages, I
uh,
speak half a language.
and my wife is an English teacher. It's easy for her, but for me, no. And no, I was, upset. I was upset. I was just, I was thinking, wow, how it's going to work with mentorship, how it's going to be, and I
Mhm.
was just a little bit worried, and I said no, it's okay, now it's okay, just that, just I want to say that.
Okay, great. Well, I'm glad to hear that. Thank you for uh, filling me in on that. Yeah, it's
I have a
important.
question, if I can.
Yeah,
I
go
don't
for
know.
it. Oh, wait, hold on just a
Uh,
second. Nicholas, is that it? Do you have anything else to say? I appreciate your words. Ni-
No, thank you. It's okay. Thank you, Pete.
Okay.
Thank you.
All right. Go
I
ahead.
was um, I was just asking if can you tell me anything about what can I do uh, to improve my work, because you always tell me that is good.
I see.
So
So if you want to know what you can do to improve your work as it
yeah,
stands
something
now,
like that.
um, I think the thing that you want to probably improve on then maybe is speed. Like how long do you think it takes you to do these paintings overall?
I these 5 I did today, so I don't
Okay.
know, is that
Yeah,
fast or
so here's what we can do. For next class, I want you to do the characters that I suggested, right? Like do what I asked. But what I also want you to do as a as a way to kind of test your bounds is hold on, I don't like this tangent. Um, the way to test your bounds, excuse me, is to time yourself and try to do something like you just done for the class, like the level that you did it, okay,
okay,
in an hour. So all the stuff that you did up until this point, like a character design, I want you to do, let's do 5 designs on top of that, where you just try to also do like 1 hour, or actually let's do 3. So there's 3 hours extra that you're going to be doing for the assignment, where you just take a character concept that you haven't made any thumbnails for or any iterations, and just start from like 0
okay,
and do it in 1 hour. Just like I was just telling Matthew, right? Like to test yourself.
okay,
And that will reveal to you your genuine weaknesses. Okay?
okay,
And if you feel like an hour is too long, which most people don't, then try to do it in half an hour. And I
okay,
mean, try to reach the same quality of work that you've already done, like got these guys, which you had weeks to work on. Okay? Can you do
okay,
it in an hour?
okay,
And you'll find out right away your own weaknesses. And the reason why I say this is because there's plenty of things you can work on, right? Like you can definitely work on your anatomy and your gesture. I think these are things that you can probably really improve upon. But what I think will be revealed to you is these things organically through these types of tests. And I want to kind of give you this instruction because what it's going to do is teach you how to teach yourself well beyond the class. Okay?
yeah, okay,
Because I can tell you what it is, but I don't think it's necessarily like you have a good scope of how to improve yourself already at some level. But if you want to kind of expedite that, like if you want to accelerate it a little bit, you know,
yeah, yeah, yeah,
then do this. Do what I'm telling you.
okay,
Yeah, it's a really great tool to improve. But listen, man, if you do good work, I'm gonna tell you do good work. I'm not gonna just critique you for the sake of critiquing you. You know,
yeah,
like I feel like your work is pretty great. Like you do a good job, and and if you just keep at it for the next year or two, you'll be really really good.
yeah,
There's no doubt. But if you want to know, like, if you want to kind of have a more direct critique to yourself, test yourself often. Okay,
okay,
that is like the best way to do it. Like, how fast can you get a painting done in an hour?
okay.
Okay, and it should reveal to you some very clear weaknesses.
Yeah, I feel my design overall is not that great.
Yeah, well, let's
So
find out. Do
yeah,
the 1 hour thing, and you'll find that maybe you're spending too much time painting, not designing, and then you write that down.
Yeah.
Yeah, that 1 hour is real stressful. You'll see. And I tell you, and I give you guys this advice because I did it myself. You got to trust me. I did a lot of this stuff myself to find out my own weaknesses, and it wasn't necessarily deliberate. It wasn't like this is what I'm gonna do, and I'll know whether I'm doing it good or not. I just stumbled upon it because I was working at big companies and I needed to find time for personal work, so I'll do it during my lunch hours, which were usually about an hour long. You know.
Yeah.
And so that's when I discovered like most of my weaknesses during that hour very often. And then that's when I discovered that's a great process to improve your work.
Okay.
All right, guys, I'll take on one more question.
Great painting, by the way.
Oh, thanks, man. Any other questions? Yeah, I'm not sure how I feel. I kind of want to add more gold, this golden thing somewhere else too. Here, I'm just going to do that. I feel like it should go somewhere else. Go ahead,
So I
Jessica.
watched a bunch of your Gumroads before and stuff,
Thanks.
and I know you talk a lot about like painting like you're sculpting,
Sure.
but I don't have access to ZBrush, and I know like just, studying anatomy is going to get me those better forms.
Uh-huh.
But like if there's any sort of ways you could kind of give advice on like how to think a bit more in terms of sculpting so you have
Sure.
a better idea of form,
Yeah,
whether it's
you don't
probably
need
just
ZBrush.
like,
You don't need
yeah.
ZBrush. I can, sorry to interrupt. I can answer that question very clearly. I'll answer it by asking you a series of questions. How often have you done form studies?
I try and do like 2 to 3 a day.
And what do you do when you do these form studies?
Uh, well, I'll break it down a lot. So like one day I might just focus on like a group of like muscles in the back because I don't draw a lot of back, so I'll look at like everything around the shoulder blade and just spend time on that. And then like maybe if I have time for more form studies that day, I'll do like the just like elbow to shoulder,
Okay, so
and like I'll break it down into small bits like that.
those aren't form studies, those are anatomy studies.
Oh, yeah.
Form studies would be like how often do you paint like cubes?
Okay.
So how often do you paint like
Not that
cubes?
often then.
Yeah. So you're having a hard time painting forms because you don't paint forms. It's like if I were to take you to the gym, right? And I'll be like, all right, Jessica, let's start off with a warm up of 200 push-ups. And you'd be like, warm up, you know? And I'd be
Yeah.
like, bro, I could do 100 push-ups, 200 push-ups. Let's do it. Let's go. And you're like, but you've been training.
Can they be
I haven't.
girl push-ups?
That's sexist. I'll pretend I didn't hear that. I'm just kidding. You're like, what? Oh, you mean the simple the knee push-ups? I'm gonna educate you on your
Yeah, those.
sexist remarks. Knee push-ups, homie, because I even do knee push-ups. They're very important.
Okay.
Um, yeah, you could do that, I guess, 200 still, and you'd still probably have a hard time, right?
Yeah, I'd
And
probably
then
make it to like 12.
yeah, and then I'll say to you, why can't you do 200? I can do 200, and then you would say to me, well, you've been working out longer than I have, and I'm like, that doesn't matter, right? Because you expect the same standard when it comes to your forms. Like just because you practice anatomy, you figure that you'd be amazing at forms, and then you'd be like, oh, I see. I see what you're trying to get at, Anthony Jones. You get it?
Yeah.
And that's what I'm trying to get at, is that if you don't spend a lot of time at something, you're not going to be good at it. It's
Okay.
just how it works. So I'm assuming that your anatomy is decent, but if you can't even render a basic cube, then you're going to have a hard time rendering something as complicated as like a deltoid.
Yeah.
You get it?
Yeah, for sure.
And how do you improve your forms? Well, practice painting forms. How do you practice painting forms? Well, just try to paint a cube. And if you feel like you're still not on the mark, then get like a flashlight and like a brick or a cube shape that you might find around your house. Light it, take a picture of it. Actually, I want to do something bizarre with his fingers. Take a picture of it, okay? And then
Yeah.
look at it in the lens of observation and see what you were doing wrong and what is existing in real life.
Okay.
Yeah, so when it comes to learning stuff, my general advice is just laser focus. If you want to practice colors, then practice colors and colors alone. Don't be trying to do design and forms and anatomy. Like just practice color. You get it?
Yeah, for sure.
So you can
Me,
really understand it. And then like practice your anatomy so you can really understand it. And then practice your form so you can really understand it, at least at some new level. It might not be a completion, right? You're never going to have a full understanding of everything right off the bat, especially. But if you just keep practicing it little by little over long periods of time, you'll acquire that knowledge very quickly. And when I mean quickly, I mean like years. Like instead of 3 to 5 years, maybe it take you a year or two.
yeah.
And instead of decades, like 2 to 3 decades to master something, it'll take you maybe 1 decade. It still takes time. It still takes a lot of time. Okay, but it's totally achievable in your lifetime, especially if you don't get sick. If you keep eating your veggies and you go exercise, do those 200 push-ups. Okay, those knee
Sounds good.
push-ups, you'll live a long and healthy life, and then you'll have more decades to master different things if you choose to.
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay.
Yeah, and hopefully that gives you some really genuine advice on the whole matter.
Yeah. I was just like, because I didn't have ZBrush, I was like, well, how do I go about like getting that sculptor ideas in
Mhm.
me? And I wasn't totally sure on that.
Yeah, I mean, you don't need ZBrush. You can still just go buy clay. See,
Yeah, yeah.
the problem with your analysis is that you're like all or nothing. There's a little bit more nuances, is what I'm trying to get at. Like just because you can't have ZBrush doesn't mean you can never learn sculptural painting, right? And
Yeah.
if you just think about it a little longer, you could have came up with these solutions without me telling you, right? Like let me give
Okay.
you an example. Like what else do you think you could do to practice how to paint more like a sculptor, aside from ZBrush and aside from using real clay? What else do you think you could do to learn
And aside from the cube practice,
Yeah.
I mean like drawing out a random shape and then trying to give it proper form, like as a test.
Bam. See? If you had just spent a little more, like a couple more seconds thinking about it, you could have found some solutions. All right?
Yeah.
That's kind of something that you need to kind of sharpen in your own arsenal, is this ability to look beyond the most obvious solutions. This is usually what makes amazing people amazing anyway, right? Is that they don't use the most obvious solutions. They keep digging. This is why scientists can like put robots on Mars. You know, they don't necessarily rely on the most intuitive information. They kind of keep digging and digging and digging, you know?
Yeah, for sure.
Scientists are the ones that are like, hey, I don't think the earth is flat, y'all. And I think there's this thing called gravity, though, you know? And I think there's more lights than we thought there were, or wavelengths of light, you know? This
Yeah.
information is really powerful. Like they're like, I don't think we all were just created. I think we might have came from a longer lineage of time and trial and error, right? Like scientists have this, and this allows them to create, cellular communication. This is what allows them to create modern medicine. This is, again, what allows them to put robots into space, right? Cool shit. There's a really cool experiment, and this is something that I want you to understand, where this guy was like, okay, I want to find out which color is the hottest that comes from the sun, right? So he opened the window, and he had these like thermostats basically lined up in a way where different colors of the on the spectrum of visible light would hit them, right? And he would get a good sense of like will yellow be hotter or would red be hotter or blue, you know?
Yeah.
And as a control is where you create a certain circumstance where you see what just the average temperature of the room without any light, right?
Okay.
And he had one on the side, so this is like in shadow, okay?
Yeah.
And so, you know, as you suspect, there were some cool, interesting results where, like, you know, some colors were hotter than others, right? And some were cooler, which was really interesting, right? Which is probably where comes the warm and cool terminology probably comes from. It's more from the actual temperature. But you know what else will happen? One of the hottest was the one in the shadow. And he was like, what? He's like, what the fuck? Right? He was like, how is that possible? How is something that's not even in light actually hotter than some of the other colors? Right?
Yeah.
And that's when they discovered ultraviolet lights. See, it's not so intuitive, but because he did a test and he did some experiments, he came to a new set of questions. And that's what you got to do. If you do nothing, then you're not going to ask those new sets of questions. Understand?
Yeah.
Like as soon as you do that thing that you suggested to yourself, you gave yourself your own advice, like drawing a shape and then trying to draw forms, then you'd be like, well, what if I do this now? How will that help me improve? And then you do that, you're like, well, what if I do this now? And how will that help me improve? What if I look
Yeah.
into this now? You know, and you see how now that creates a, a chain reaction of knowledge gathering.
Yeah.
And that's, again, that's how scientists put robots on Mars because of that kind of thinking. And I wish I invented this. It's actually, there's a name for this. It's called the scientific method. And I'm just saying to you, use the scientific method just for art. Okay? It's where
Yeah.
you do some research, you create a hypothesis, which you just did. Maybe if I try using this shape and then try to find the forms in this random shape, that could help me master my forms, right? It's a good
Yeah.
hypothesis, actually. It's a very good one. Now you just got to test it out, look at the results, and then ask yourself a new series of questions. Did your hypothesis come true? Then that adds to a fact, to a larger theory, because sometimes people think that theories means opinions. No, theories means this is the best information that we have of this thing for now off of factual evidence, okay? And so you create a stronger theory around your art. Make sense? And
Yeah.
then, and you just, by doing that, is by just keep doing scientific method, just keep creating hypotheses and then expand upon those. And then just look at the results. Like, let's say you do it and you learn nothing. It doesn't mean that it's wrong. Maybe it's more variables. So you just try different things. You change things around, you know, until you
Okay.
start to see true improvement in your work. Um, and it will happen irregardless of whether you're wrong or right. So yeah, so you got it. I think you got it in you.
Yeah. It's just a bit of a slow morning this morning.
No, it's not that you're slow about it. It's just that a lot of times art is perceived as this thing that's like you either got it or you don't. And I think a lot of that is still subconsciously embedded in a lot of artists, you know?
Yeah, for sure.
And the reality that I'm trying to reveal to you is that it's not like that at all. Like most people actually don't got it. They just got to earn it. That's why I always go with the mantra, talent is, you're not given talent, you earn talent.
Yeah.
And let me make a few things clear, and I'm going to end the class. Um, there are people that have advantages over others, you know, whether that's access to more information, location, or it could just be the fact that they just have a little bit different brain chemistry going on, so they have a little bit more opportunities to learn things a little bit easier than others, right? There are people that have advantages in maybe their their actual hands. You know, and you can see this to be true for the like really clear things like being a basketball player, right? Like if you're taller, you're going to have a huge advantage over somebody who's not uh, tall, correct? Like these are obvious advantages. And so, you know, people try to stick onto this too much, like the advantages are what really drives what makes people awesome. And I'm trying to say, no, that's not. It's really just the work and the tireless effort of just trying to improve, okay?
Yeah.
Because the reason why Kobe Bryant is better than me at basketball is not because he's taller. It's because he plays decades worth of basketball, you know? That's why he's better than me. And that's like really the only reason, okay? Because
Yeah.
if we were to Freaky Fridays, like if he was to have my body and I would have his, like we switch bodies, you know, and I have his tall physique, it doesn't mean all of a sudden that I'll be a great basketball player. You know what I mean?
Yeah, for sure.
And then all of a sudden in his body, I would be able to draw, and in my body, he'll still be able to play basketball like a fucking boss. He'll just have to be 5'9" instead of whatever height he is now. I think he's close to 7 feet. Right?
Yeah.
And so, yeah, keep that in mind. And almost every example I've found in the history of people that are awesome at things, everybody's spent, you know, definitely more than like a day on something. They spent years. Even people that are like they're clearly like prodigies, like Mozart, who composed music when he was 5 years old, but he was playing since he was 3. And his dad is a great musician and a teacher, and his dad was strict with him on his education and teaching. You know?
Yeah.
Billy Elliot played chess. Not Billy Elliot. I keep saying Bobby Fischer. Bobby Fischer played chess since he was like 6 or 7 years old. And so when he was 13, 14, he would have put in nearly a half a decade in chess. And he
Yeah.
loved it. He played by himself. If he didn't have anyone to play with, he would play by himself. And his mom bought him a book to master it, and he mastered it. You know, this is why
Yeah.
he's excellent. And here's one last thing, which is, you know, Usain Bolt is one of the fastest people on this planet, and if not the fastest, he has holds several world records for running really fast. Now imagine, Jessica, that
Mhm.
you did everything that he did. Like you started the same time that he started training and running, and you did every single thing that he did, and you trained just as hard as he did, and you worked as hard as he did, and you had the same kind of philosophies as he has, or whatever, in terms of running.
Yeah.
I have no doubt that he would still beat you in a race, right?
Yeah.
He would still smoke you, even with all that training that parallels his. But here's the catch. You would still be amongst the fastest people in this world, Jessica. You would be amongst the top 100 fastest people on this planet. If anything, probably one of the fastest women, you know?
Yeah.
So what I'm trying to get at is if you put a lot of effort and a lot of time into something, maybe you will never be truly the top of the top, you know? Like the very, very best, but you will be amongst a few that are really excellent at what they do. You understand?
Yeah.
So that's why you should always strive for greatness, not because you will be the greatest, but because you will be amongst the greatest. Okay? And that is very
Yeah.
powerful, and you can make a whole living off of that. I am not the fastest painter that I know. I know people that are much faster than me and better than me, but I am really good regardless of that fact. Get it?
Yeah.
Like I know people that are better painters than me. I know people that are faster painters than me, but I am amongst the best. That's what I'm trying to say. And you could be here alongside me, all of you guys, easily. And when I say easily, easily is relative. Easily as in if you just keep working at it for the next 4 to 5 years, you guys will be right next to me for sure. I have no doubts. It's already happening, man. I already have students that are like surpassing me. It's insane. And they've only been doing it for a year or two. So I overshot how fast it would take. Actually, it could be faster if you really keep at it. Okay?
Challenge accepted, man.
Yeah, but you know what? I'm still young. So Jessica, when you're freaking dope, then I'll learn from you, and then you have to catch it to your student.
Sounds great.
Yeah, it's already happened. Trust me. I can name a handful of students of mine that are better than me, and it's actually
Yeah.
it's. I think it's good if your students can be better than you. That's a reflection of how good the students are and their passion, but also a reflection of my teachings. But the problem is, they're getting better than me, so I need to like step up my own game. And so I'm like, all right, I see what you've done, and I raise you that epic speed painting that I did in 10 minutes. Now what you got? You know?
Yeah.
It's a fun place to be. There comes a point where it's irrelevant, you know, because everybody's great and everyone like it's the greatest inside joke that a lot of great artists have, which is that we work really hard and we've been doing it for quite a while. There's no secret.
Yeah.
So hopefully that gives you some great insight, and hopefully what I taught you about like how to kind of be self-aware of what you need to learn. It seems like it's the common theme for today's class. A lot of you guys were curious about that. So hopefully you guys have some more uh, fuel for the fire.
Thank you so much.
Yeah, no problem. Great questions. All right, guys, I'm going to let you guys go. Thanks for hanging in there till 11. We started the class a little later, so I wanted to make sure I did this Q&A for you guys. But with that, I'm going to roll out. Peace out, y'all, and have a great weekend. Be sure to hang out with one another, outside of class. Don't just always just wait till class starts. There's the Discord. There is Skype. So always feel free to talk and hang out and work alongside one another. It's a very powerful tool. With that, I'm bouncing. Latest, guys. Have a great weekend. Thank you for watching this video. I appreciate it. Please subscribe to watch more in the future. If you like the video, I would appreciate a thumbs up. If you like this content, you can go to my website, robotpencil.net, where you can find mentorships, tutorials, and a Patreon to get more exclusive content. Thanks again, and I'll see you guys in my next videos.